I know we have been doing a lot of holiday email marketing, and we have a lot of holiday email marketing coming up.
Yeah.
Um, so, Anna Sophia, with the clients, what are you seeing as the type of things that clients are wanting to see for holiday email marketing?
Well, I must say, I think they are expecting like a bit too many sales emails, and I am a bit worried just because they should not expect that like a big number in emails because that might end up in spam or that might end up being annoying for clients.
So I will say, like for myself personally, like I'm receiving from some brands an email every day, like for through Black Friday and everything. It's just like every day, some of them multiple times per day, emails.
I've been unsubscribing daily.
Yeah,
No, but some clients want like two emails a day, salesly.
yeah,
It's important to. I'm gonna have to communicate with them,
yeah.
let them
What do you
know.
think is the ideal number, or like in a week's time before holiday, so
Like one every 3 days.
one every 3 days.
Okay.
Okay.
So I actually have a question, and it's really a question for the room. You've touched on we've touched on holiday time, holiday emails. I suppose the question is, during this time, especially with the emailing we do for clients, how do we ensure our emails are actually getting seen? Because what we've just said is it's holiday time. Every company, every subscriber to a client, they might be subscribed to multiple mailing lists. And I think there's a lot of fatigue, like email and marketing fatigue. What do we really do to try and ensure our emails are getting seen and they stand out from what the rest of the different companies are sending?
Well, personally, I believe most importantly, like the subject line, one of the most important things. And I believe in personalization. That's whenever I read my name, that's the first email I will open. You should have like every client name in your mailing list. It's a bit risky when you don't have the names, but I've seen an increase in the open rate whenever I've put personalization for first name. I think that's number one, and to not be repetitive inside.
Yeah. So you mean personalization in the subject line itself?
Yes.
That's interesting. So we also see that on outreach emails. So prospecting that the first name or the company name in the subject line, we get a higher response rate.
Yeah, if it's B2B, I think it's even better.
Yeah.
Because one time I got an email for an old company I used to have, and I was like, how do they know this company? How do they know my company? And they put it like right in the subject line, and I was like very intrigued, and that's why I opened it. But I must say, people that are like 50 and up, they get too scared about that. They don't know how you got their names. They don't know how you got their company name, and they get freaked out. I've had responses like, how do you have my name? How do you know my email? How do you know my company name?
So there's generation. So it's generational as well by your target audience. Who? Okay. Now that's I do see that as well. So that's interesting to think about. I didn't think about it like that until you just exactly like that until you just said that. But yeah, it does make sense.
So I think also it's really a conversation for the room. But so email, we use it in Solucru. We do a lot of email campaigns for clients. Clients normally have a way they want us to communicate in emails. And as Sophia, obviously you normally advise them, you consult them, you tell them, hey, that's a good idea, that's a bad idea. I think a question for the room is, in the modern day, are emails often too focused on sales? And what I mean by that, are we seeing too many emails where it's like, purchase now, here's a discount, purchase, make the purchase, buy now? And if that's the case, what is the alternative kind of emails we could be sending to reach out to potential clients, but where we aren't just focusing on the sale?
It's more about nurturing campaigns. I believe the first option that comes to mind is newsletter, but not only newsletter. Like we have more options. We should have like capsules for client, like informative capsules, like also personalized in the taste of the client. This client wants to hear more about this, and the tools give you those insights. This client is more wants to read more about men's health, or this client wants to read more about vaccines. I'm talking about the health
Yeah.
Industry. So
So you're talking about segmenting and basically segmenting the list off of behavior. So they've done something that tells us,
yeah, the clicks.
yeah, so we've seen what they've done before, so now we know that they should receive more content similar.
Yeah, and that will be good for like, that's a way for people to get in the website, to read in the blog, and not just be telling them to buy. They will still find all the packages or all the, all they can buy, and
Yeah.
it's not necessarily so direct.
So I think I know from my side as well, we've discussed this with clients, a lot of, or a big mistake, I would say, especially in the retail industry, is typically a customer will make a purchase. They'll make a purchase on your website, and I always believe you need to nurture that customer. So you want to send them, let's say it's the first time they make a purchase or they've made a booking, you ideally want to be sending them a welcome email, like welcome to us, this is what we do. But I think where a lot of clients get this wrong is they immediately want to follow up with another sale. So I've just made a purchase and now you email me and you're like, hey, do you know if you buy this, we'll give you 10% off? And I mean, there's a place and time for that, but I think it can leave a bit of a sour taste in my mouth because I'm like, well, I just gave you my money and you are basically asking me for more money.
Yeah, I think my personal view of a welcome sequence is it should do a few things, right? So it should, kind of confirm the relationship. We're now together. You're a customer of ours. It should give that person the information around how do they get support, or how do we work together depending on what type of business it is. And then I think it should start potentially, ideally, if you have this with your brand, it should start telling the brand story. And, maybe if it's a founder-based company, the founder passion, right? Or if it's a company that's community-based, right? How do we impact the community? And so just really building that relationship outside of just transactional.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I do believe we also need to offer a benefit if it's retail. We are not the only people in your inbox, so what
Yeah.
makes you stand out? Like,
Yeah.
offer a benefit.
I want to talk now a little bit about list segmenting, right? So maybe discussing some specifics. So you hinted, Anna Sophia, about healthcare, and so we have some healthcare clients, and so they just say they offer a variety of services. So some of those services are relevant to everyone. Some of those services are relevant to only men. Some are only women. Just in general, though, like how should we be approaching the segmentation of those lists to make sure we have those high account health scores?
I think starting from the basics, we need to have like predicted gender, age, also basic B2B, B2C, but also I believe mostly about whenever people click on something, segmenting from based on that, like what is your interest? So interest based. So either like back to school offers or reading.
So do they
about-
have kids?
If they have kids, if they
Yeah.
don't,
Yeah.
if they're more concerned about some illness or just preventive care, preventive test.
Yeah.
Which could also be age appropriate.
Yeah, age
Yeah.
appropriate as well.
Yeah.
That's why I guess age is. It's important.
And we do use MailChimp a lot. We use other systems, but MailChimp, for instance, I know you mentioned the predictive age, predictive gender. So that's like it needs some information, and I think MailChimp uses their network. So if they have the email address multiple times, and they use some of those things, and then they also use some just truly predictive things to put people into those buckets. It's not 100%, but I think it's definitely better than sending something that's specifically, like in the healthcare example, healthcare testing for women, or in a retail space, a women's clothing, promotion to everyone, right? Because now you're risking unsubscribes because it seems like, hey, how did I get on this women's list? But I'm male. So that's definitely something I think a lot of people are overlooking. I know there's arguments, right? Because they could say, well, they could buy, women's clothing for a significant other or a parent or a family member or whatever. But I think because of the crowded inbox, I think it's more risky that they're just going to unsubscribe.
I would also say it's about positioning. So what you've just touched on is a real scenario. Absolutely, I could see an email. It's relevant to my wife, and now I go make a purchase on her behalf. But I think, again, for example, if you are a male and you're interested in sport, you don't want to be receiving an email about women's lingerie. But what you may want to receive is a very male sport focused email. But maybe there's a segment in there that, hey, you want to buy an awesome gift for your spouse.
Right.
It's about that positioning, because that gets my buy-in. It's the content I like, but you're also giving me an opportunity to explore that avenue.
Like, hey, Mother's Day is coming up.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Something like that.
I also believe visuals inside the email is very important, because nowadays people don't like to read.
Yes, for sure. People have very short attention spans. So you're building mostly emails with HTML.
I didn't used to know much about HTML, and I've learned now. Because at first I was like, so Mailchimp is intuitive, but it doesn't offer a lot of options that you can do with HTML. So I had to learn a bit to complement.
Yeah. And then there's also the Outlook email deliver, like it breaks everything, it's.
So Outlook in general is probably the hardest email client to get an email to actually look the way it looks when you send it, because Outlook does typically break the HTML and it breaks the styling. So yes, HTML is normally the best way to go about it, because you can really fine-tune what that's going to look like and how it's going to serve. MailChimp has tried to accommodate Outlook, but ultimately, it's not their platform.
Right.
So there's only so much they can do.
So then what we've seen, though, is if you build in full HTML, it typically will retain.
Correct. If you build in full HTML, you apply all the best practices, you should have an email that you sit with about a 98% chance that it would be fully legible on all different email platforms.
And you won't see any code.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
To me, it's crazy that in almost 2025, people still use Outlook.
Well, they're growing because, so I agree. We use G Suite. We've always used G Suite, but I would say Outlook has done a really good job through COVID with corporations, because they have gotten a lot of corporations to come on board to their, to the cloud-based systems. Yeah, they're using their meetings with Microsoft, web meetings. They're doing obviously the email share file.
It's all the Office stuff as well. So Excel, Word, you name it.
Yeah, it was like they were kind of fading, and then COVID really revived them. I think specifically with the meeting component.
Correct.
A lot of corporates are using that now. So it's frustrating, especially B2B emails, because now now this bigger percentage than maybe you would have thought. Like in consumer side, it's lesser, but now in B2B, a lot of people are going to have these the format breaking issues.
Absolutely.
So if you're not designing in HTML, like you can just assume everybody who's in Outlook, if you're using something like Mailchimp or some other similar builder, you add a button there, right? It's a good chance that that person's going to see the code
Yeah.
in there when they open the email. So that's obviously not very professional. Doesn't send a good signal to. It's for a lot of people. It could be scary. They think like, hey, if I click something in here,
Yeah, it's
I'm
a
going
virus.
to get hacked or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. There's a security concern. We live where there's a lot of phishing scams and email scams, and so you really want your email to be on point.
Yeah.
If there's code or anything that looks off, you're going to scare people. I think a good part of that, though, so that's the whole conversation about getting emails to look good, getting emails to work in different clients. But I think another thing people want to know is deliverability. What are the steps you can take to ensure your emails are actually going to the inbox, not ending up in spam, and actually getting read and opened?
Well, talking about HTML, if you have a bad code, it will go to spam. So you have to make sure the code is good. Also, if you put too many emojis in the subject line, exclamation marks,
Yes.
or you use salesy words too much,
Yeah.
it will go to spam. So you have to be careful. Even Mailchimp and other platforms tell you, like, this is too many emojis, or delete some exclamation marks, or don't use the caps too much, like
Yeah.
lower it down.
Yeah.
And then I think, like you touched on the subject line as well, like I know there's subject lines where if you use it like, hey, win a free car, and
Yeah.
like things like that can often also just get you into the spam box. I would say besides deliverability, we work with this a lot. What are the kind of statistics we look at on the back end? Like when we see send an email campaign, what are we looking at to measure the success of that email campaign?
Well, I think some of the first things that people look at is the open rate, but I believe that's not the most important, because some people, like myself, I open to just take the notification off and don't read it. So I think we should focus more on click rate and unsubscribe rate. If the lesser unsubscribe rate, the better, and the more click rates, the better, because that's a sign that you are interesting. Your campaign is interesting people.
I agree with that, and I think obviously beyond that, then if it's e-commerce, whatever the purchase rate, or because that at the end of the day, that in a sales focused campaign would be the primary objective. But I agree. I also do the same thing. I try to keep my inbox at 0, so I will just open emails, so I don't have unread emails.
Yeah.
I have an automation that whenever I receive emails from, I already like tag them as companies. So I receive this email from this company that I don't want to read again. If I don't want to unsubscribe, I create a folder and with the name of the company, and they open immediately as soon as I receive it, and it goes to red, to that folder. I
Yes,
never
yes.
see them. So that
Okay.
might be
Yeah, I do think people do things like that. I would say as a counter on the unsubscribe, or not the as a counter on the side of open rate. So I think at least you can assume that the account is active if opens happen.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're doing the bigger picture, like cleanup, like is this worth ever sending an email to this person? If they're opening at least, then you can keep them there.
exactly that's
Right.
what
But
it's
it
good
doesn't
for.
mean it's going to get a result because of things like you've just said. But at least they're potentially still using that email. It's still live. It's
Yeah, I believe it's an active.
yeah.
So a question I have, again, just for the group, is because you've touched on something very specific. Heck, I do it. I get a lot of emails. Maybe I subscribe to it for a very particular reason. Maybe it was just transactional. You know, you make a hotel booking, and then for years down the line, they're always sending you different options, different things. Now, the thing is, I do think, at least in South Africa, we have a saying, Anasafia, I don't know if it's an expression in Panama, but we've got FOMO, so fear of missing out. I know in the States that's a thing. So I think what happens is a lot of people, they don't want to unsubscribe because they're like, what if that really once in a lifetime
amazing
deal does come through? You know, this hotel, I loved my time there. But what if they send me an amazing deal where it's 80% off for Black Friday or something like that? So I suppose, how do we engage people so that we can kind of do a cleanup? Like, because it's difficult. If somebody's just going to keep those emails, it goes to, like in your situation, it gets opened, it goes to a folder. I'm pretty sure you never actually go and look at that folder. So you may have FOMO, but now it's living in a folder, it's being forgotten about. How do we try and re-engage people to say, hey, do you truly still want to be part of this? You know, is there a way we could do that? Is there a campaign we could run to do that?
Like you just said, like sending a campaign to re-engage people or to unsubscribe them. Hey, do you still want to hear about us? We offer this, we offer that. We have, like, these are our values, this is our history, and we will like it if we continue our relationship. So giving them an option of unsubscribing, or so if you want to continue hearing about us, just open this email and that's it.
So here's a question I have, and it may be controversial, because I know a lot of clients, I know a lot of companies, they think their mailing list is gold. Yeah. They think I've got 100,000 contacts in my mailing list, and I'm just going to make sales left, right, and center. This is gold. This has to stay intact. Now, we know there are health issues, and on an account health issues, emails bouncing, emails being flagged as spam, emails being flagged as abuse, emails just not being opened at all, low click. All these things affect account health. So the piece I'm going to say that may be a little bit controversial, and I want to hear both of your opinions on this, is do we ever, so that email we just spoke of where you're reaching out to someone and you're saying, hey, do you still want to hear from us? Do we ever want to go out and say, hey, if you don't take an action on this email, we are actually just going to take it as your intent is you don't care for our content, and because you don't care for our content, we are going to unsubscribe you. Because realistically, that does kind of solve the problem. Now we know emails are always being opened, but you're not actually actively participating. And if it's the FOMO thing, if you're not taking an action, it's like, well, now we get to clean out our list. Now, the reason I say it's controversial, we know what could happen. You could potentially have a situation where nobody responds, and now you are essentially culling your mailing list.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've done that for sure. So we don't typically unsubscribe them off of they have to respond or not, but we'll typically send a sequence where they're gonna if they're not taking some action, right? So if we send them 3 emails and the purpose of those 3 emails is to do this list cleanup activity, and they don't open any of those 3, we're going to archive them, right? We're going to pull them out. But I do know, I mean, one of our clients has like 1 million plus person list, but less than 100,000 are engaged, right?
Yeah, like they don't have to respond. Just opening is an action. If they open, they can stay in the list, I believe. Because
they're still active. And I do think the asking for an action would reduce in a 90+% reduction of your list, unless you have a very active list. But then you would, I don't know that you would be thinking of that if with a very active list. But I do think we see when clients do think their list is gold, they're so stuck on their list. This list is going to change everything. It's going to, they're selling their list to investors, and they're selling the value of their list to investors, right, to get funds, things like this. It's a false narrative, because what then ends up happening is lower open rates, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse, because you're basically sending you're sending terrible signals to the email providers, that hey, nobody wants this, like this is spam. So like we've reduced one list by 80% plus, but now they get good open rates, good engagement rates, and that's what actually matters, is the engagement. And if you're hurting your deliverability rate because you're sending to all these people who they may not even be living, right? Like literally, then you're going to not get that engagement, because it's not going to go in the inbox.
For email marketing, what if some company or any client wants to accumulate contacts and send to the bigger list and get more contacts in, I believe quality is better than quantity at the end.